Good morning. During January, the month of New Year's resolutions, we've been talking about ways to make your 2021 the very best year of your life. We'll end this month by delving into one of the most practical and important tools ever in terms of transforming your life for the better. That tool is good communication skills. Knowing how to truly communicate with another being forms closeness and oneness, and therefore more happiness for everybody involved. These communication techniques are usually offered during spiritual counseling, especially when people are not getting along, which is one of the biggest reasons people come to spiritual counseling. But they are so important, these tools, that I thought we could take a look at them now. What they are and how to effectively communicate and use these communication tools and techniques to enhance all areas of your life. To be able to create true closeness with the people you love and care about is a gift and one of the best tools that you'll ever put into your spiritual toolbox. It's definitely practical spirituality. Some of you may remember the Christmas carol, "Do you hear what I hear?" Pardon my singing. Maybe you sang it even last month. That seems an apt title for today's truth lesson about communication because we seldom hear what others are really saying. Have you ever really thought about that? You never really hear them. They don't hear you. Sure, we may hear the words, but we don't hear what's really being communicated, and that prevents us from having a real relationship with that person. For example, in A Course in Miracles, we often say that everything that is communicated is either love or a cry for love. What we often miss are those cries for love. We just see difficult people. Any teacher knows that often little Johnny is acting up in class because he needs the teacher's attention and what he perceives as love. It's not to be hateful toward the teacher. Experts tell us that communication is a vital component of any family or any relationship, or even fellow members at work. Communication is especially, of course, critical in a love relationship. And a love relationship is with anyone you love and care about. It's not just a romantic connection. So what is communication? We communicate through body language, the tone of our voice, facial expressions, and even what some people call vibes, that energy that we put out all the time. We're constantly emitting that energy, and it reflects our thoughts, it reflects our feelings and our consciousness like a radio transmitter. Other people are picking that up. True communication or intimacy in any relationship is much more than just the swapping of information or opinions. This is especially true in any kind of love relationship with the special people in our lives, like family, like true friends. Any relationship that doesn't go beyond just sharing stories or information or opinions is a rather dull relationship, and it doesn't seem to enable true friendship. It leaves both people feeling empty. In fact, it's no relationship at all. In French, I know a lot of you speak French, the word for friend is, well, what's the word for friend, you all? Ami, very good. But there's another word, copain, which means a buddy. A copain or buddy is someone you share words with, or maybe you go places with. Maybe they're in your class. But a true relationship, or an ami, is someone with whom we truly share ourselves. It's someone with whom we share our innermost thoughts, feelings, goals, and desires. This is real sharing and real communication. This is real friendship. It's not just about words from the head or the mouth, but sharing from our heart. First, I'd like to look at some of the barriers to true communication in our relationships with the people that we love. Barrier number one to effective communication is what we call mixed messages. This is when our words say one thing, but our body, facial expressions, and voice tones say something entirely different. For example, have you ever said to someone, "Are you mad?" And they answer, "No, I'm not mad." Whatever would give you that impression? Their words are saying one thing, of course, and their body language and their voice tone are saying something entirely different. We know they're mad. Mixed messages are kind of like static in our communications because we don't know what to relate to, the truth or the lie. Do we relate to their words or to their body expressions and facial expressions? Usually, though, we end up relating to both, and that's what creates confusion. We're relating to the truth and the lie. And that confusion prevents you from feeling truly at one with that person. You've been cut out of his or her life. You may be their copain or their buddy, but you aren't really friends. And that often makes you feel empty after a while with that person. A second barrier to communication is what could be called the hidden message or ulterior message or ulterior motive. An ulterior message is when something is said as a fact, when in reality there's a hidden message behind it. We've all dealt with that. On the surface, it sounds very harmless, but underneath there's a form of manipulation going on. For example, Mary's at home. She's watching TV. Her husband, Johnny, walks in and says, "Mary, there are dirty dishes in the sink." That's simply a fact, right? There are dirty dishes in the sink. There's a lamp on the table. What if Mary looked up and said, "Yeah, you're right, I noticed the same thing. There are dirty dishes in the sink," and went right on watching television? Would that satisfy Johnny? No, because what Johnny's really saying to Mary is, "There are dirty dishes in the sink, and I want you to go in and do them right now." That's what's meant by ulterior motives. We could add to that anything that we say to impress, shame, or manipulate another person, maybe even manipulating them to be impressed by our wit. There's no real communication going on, and we can't get past the superficial level with that person, and that leaves both people feeling empty. The third barrier to true communication is preconceived ideas. That's when we have a concept in our minds about what the other person needs, when we have decided ahead of time what the answer is before we listen to the question. This is often true with people who interrupt a lot. When we interrupt, we've already decided what they're going to say, and then we've already decided what our answer is going to be. Thus, there's no real communication. Another example of preconceived ideas dominating real communication was a case that I read about recently of a mother who had a daughter who was reaching that age when the mother felt like she was going to have to tell her daughter about the facts of life. She was a very conscientious mother, so she decided to do her job thoroughly and properly. She went to the library, she read all the books she could find on the subject and about child psychology. She outlined, she rehearsed, she practiced it, and she had the whole thing down to a 22-minute presentation covering all of the points, not skipping anything, but being very delicate. She had all the proper attitudes and ideas that psychologists say are essential in that situation. She felt really good that she was ready for the day when her daughter would come home and pop the question. Mom was ready, but apparently little Sally was not. Time went by and Sally never asked anything. Finally, that magic day arrived when Sally came home from school and said, "Mom, where did I come from?" Mom took Sally by the hand and said, "Follow me, dear." She took her into the other room and said, "Sally," and proceeded to give her a beautiful, flawless 22-minute presentation. When Sally's mother finished, she smiled with that feeling of self-pride. Little Sally looked at her with a bit of contempt and said, "Mom, I know all that stuff, but my friend Susie comes from Chicago. Where do I come from?" Very often, we give beautiful answers to questions that nobody asks, or we interrupt with a comment before listening to what they really have to say. Real communication is listening, of always being concerned, not always being concerned with our replies about what other people are saying, which is probably not even what they're trying to say. The fourth barrier, and this is perhaps the foundation upon which all other barriers to communication rest. This barrier is the fear of self-revelation. The fear of me telling you who I really am, which is the basis of most lies. Because if I tell you who I really am, what could happen? Two very important things, very painful things could happen. One, if I tell you who I really am, you might not like me anymore. Or two, if I tell you who I really am, you might someday use it against me. So I'll play it safe. I won't tell you who I really am. I'll put this little fence around me. I'll put this little wall there to protect me. But the fence that protects me also is imprisoning me. I have no real friends. I'm in a prison. So barrier number 4 is fear of revelation, which is another reason we sometimes lie to people. So, mixed messages, ulterior motive messages, preconceived ideas, and fear of self-revelation are 4 barriers that we can work on if we want to develop effective communication and meaningful relationships that make both people feel fulfilled. Next, how do we overcome these barriers so that we can have true dialogue with another? Dialogue isn't a magic wand. It's a tool, and like any tool, we need to learn how to use it and work with it. Much of our communication is really not sharing ourselves at all. It's more like Facebook or Snapchat snippets. Excuse me. And like Facebook and Snapchat, its goal is often ego inflation. Look what I'm doing. Look what my life is like. Look how good or funny or interesting or smart I am. And this certainly doesn't create closeness. Another thing to notice is that much of our conversation is not dialogue, but a form of game playing and manipulation. Not being truthful, for example, certainly falls into that category. We or they are saying, if only you were the way I wanted you to be, we'd both be much happier. If only you would accept my doing all these things I'm not going to tell you about, we could both be much happier. Or we're downright lying, which is a kind of manipulation. The problem is that we aren't authentic, and we're so concerned about manipulating the other person that we miss out on genuine closeness with that person, which is ironically probably our real desire when we're lying or trying to manipulate in the first place. So we're not getting what we really want. Dialogue, as I'm using the term, is not debate. It's not a win-lose situation. Dialogue is either win-win or lose-lose. You both win if there's effective dialogue, or you both lose if there's not. Dialogue isn't necessarily for problem solving either. although problems are often solved in a way we don't expect when we really do have true dialogue with another. But that's lagniappe. It's not the primary purpose. Sometimes we may say, let's sit down and dialogue and look at all the angles and analyze this thing and brainstorm and see if we can come up with something. This is often helpful, but it's still working at the head level. We're working with logic and rationality at that point. True dialogue with another person is heart-to-heart communication. That's what leaves both people feeling fulfilled. Dialogue is based on what we're feeling, not on what we're thinking. Dialogue is what true friends participate in. That is what happens with Ami. The goal of dialogue is to develop a process whereby we understand one another at an even deeper level. It is to be able, at least momentarily, to reach out and experience someone else's life, to be able to see the world from their perspective. The great transcendentalist Henry David Thoreau asked in his classic work, Walden, you remember Walden Pond, could a greater miracle take place than for us to look through another's eyes for a moment? And that is the goal of dialogue. To develop a communication that is so deep that I am feeling the world the way you are perceiving it, and you are seeing the world the way I am seeing it. And in that joining of perceptions, all differences dissolve, all shortcomings are overlooked, and we experience our oneness with another person, the oneness of all life that we talk about in here almost every Sunday. We realize that we really are that other person, metaphysically, spiritually, and even in terms of quantum physics. At Unity, we often talk about the importance of being at one with the world and with others, which means being at one with God, the all. Well, true oneness is not just an idea. It's going through the barriers so that the fears of true communication are gone, and we can truly be with one another. When we are truly dialoguing, we are no longer two, we are one. That's true relationship. And this can take place between any two people. It doesn't have to be in a romantic relationship, of course. This is true friendship. This is family closeness. This is developing love between you and another human being. This creates the possibility of having more than a superficial relationship with others. However much we might be intertwined on the physical plane, we're not really at one with them. Now let's look at the principle of dialogue. I'm going to give you 3 principles for effective dialogue with you as the speaker, the one who shares your feelings. And I'm going to give you 3 principles for being the one who hears these feelings. Number 1 for the speaker is to share your feelings, not your opinions, not your judgments, not your political ideas. The purpose of dialogue is to share our feelings. And one way to start that process is to start your sentences with, I feel. I feel this way or that way. Or not I think or I believe, or it should be that way, like in the case with so much of our conversation. True dialogue begins with, I feel. The second tool is to stay in the now moment. The more we get into our past or into the future, the more we get out of our feelings and into our heads. Avoid words like always. Always doesn't really mean anything when you think about it. And never doesn't mean anything either. All they do is cloud the issue and take us out of the here and now moment. Rather, say, this is the way I'm feeling now at this present moment. I'm sharing with you exactly what I feel right now, here. Whether I feel that way tomorrow or felt that way yesterday is irrelevant. The point is, that's how I feel right now. The third way of sharing is to be as specific and concrete as possible in sharing your feelings. Try to use metaphors and visual images as much as possible. I know you're thinking, I'm a literature teacher, of course I'm going to say that, but that's the way that it's taught in unity counseling. Stay away from abstractions and generalizations. Use those visual images. For example, what if you said to me, how are you feeling? And I answered, I'm feeling bad. What does that tell you? Not a whole lot. What if I said to you, I feel like I've been shipwrecked in the middle of a stormy sea and I'm just barely holding on and I'm tired and I don't know if I can hold on much longer. Does that tell you a little bit more about the way I'm feeling? Sure. We can relate to images because our feelings are a function of the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind deals with images. We don't dream in words, we dream in images because our feeling nature, the subconscious mind, uses symbols and pictures and images as its language. So try to be as pictorial as you can in describing your feelings to another person so they truly will grasp how you're feeling. The interesting thing is that as we describe our own feelings to another person, we are gaining an ever-deepening awareness of ourselves, of our own feelings. And that is perhaps the greatest benefit of all. As we share, we're discovering ourselves and what we need to work on, what we need to deal with. And knowledge is power. Now, as a listener, point number 1, use your intuition. Tune in to the other person. Don't listen only with your physical ears. Don't analyze. Tune in to the person. Listen between the lines. Listen with your heart. You'll hear so much more that way. The intellect hears the words. The heart perceives the body language, the voice tone, the facial relationships. It picks up on the energy that's coming out of that person, these vibes. There is so much more that can be perceived from the heart-to-heart level of communication. Use your intuition. Secondly, the verbal feedback technique. This is very helpful, not only when you're dialoguing, but in any conversation. To give verbal feedback, you might say, this is what I hear you saying. Is this what you're meaning to tell me? Do you hear what I hear? When we give this verbal feedback, we are very often making the other person more aware of something they're not even aware of themselves. And there is a lot of misunderstanding that goes on because they don't understand themselves. So this is the time that it can be completely cleared up. Third, as a listener, avoid judgments. We should always avoid judgments, of course. We don't have to approve or agree in order to dialogue with someone else. Democrats can dialogue with Republicans and vice versa. We are not there to pass judgment on them. We're not there to decide whether their feelings are right or wrong, or whether they should feel this way or that. That's not our function. We're there to listen. Also, avoid pity. Sometimes we think that pity is helpful. Sometimes we equate pity with empathy, and we really think we're doing the right thing. But there's a huge difference. Empathy is, as Thoreau said, seeing the world through the other person's eyes. Pity is seeing that person as this helpless little victim. Whenever we experience pity for another person, we're seeing them as a victim beyond their control. When we hold that image of them as a victim, then we're holding them as a helpless consciousness. We are contributing, actually, to their victimized state by creating that consciousness around them. Pity doesn't do anyone any good. Also, avoid giving advice. Advice has its place, but not in dialogue. And avoid trying to rescue. This is perhaps the hardest thing of all, particularly for men. So often, especially if it's someone we love who is hurting, we want to reach out and take them away from that pain. Oh, let me do something about that pain of yours. And we want to take them out of the pain. Our intentions are pure. They're perhaps very good, but maybe that's the worst thing we can do. Take that person out of their pain. Often they just need to be listened to. But what we need to really do is support that person in the experience that they are having at that moment, not take them out of that experience. They're really having that experience. So often we do this, of course, with children. Johnny falls down, cuts his knee, hurts himself. Oh, I have an ice cream cone. Take this candy here. It doesn't really hurt. We don't allow little Johnny to have his experience of pain, of letting him cry it out, and discovering that the world doesn't come to an end when he scrapes his knee, and that he can go on living no matter what. Rescuing and glossing over another's pain is something that we need to watch out for. The 5 deadly words that can kill any dialogue instantly are, "You shouldn't feel that way." That'll do it. That will put an end to real communication. We not only don't listen to the other person's feelings, but we're saying, you don't even have any right to feel that way. Bottom line, principles of dialogue. As a speaker, we share our feelings, not our words. We stay at the heart level and out of the head level as much as possible. And we stay in the here and now. Be here now, as Ram Dass said. Avoid pasting and futuring, and be as specific and concrete as possible in sharing your feelings. As a listener, use your intuition. Tune in to the other person. Listen between the lines. Give verbal feedback like, "I hear you saying, is that what you mean?" In other words, do you hear what I hear? And third, avoid judgments, pity, advice, rescue, and the 5 deadly words, "You shouldn't feel that way." Some of this may seem like common sense, but doing it is rare. Learning to truly communicate, and it will instantly change your life and your relationships for the better. I hope that sharing some of these spiritual counseling tools will help you make 2021 your very best year ever. The year when you transform buddies into true friends and acquaintances into people you can feel truly at one with. That's one step closer to being at one with God, at one with the all. And you certainly do deserve that.